So, no. Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. We're ready to drop some Russell's 15s today. It's the big day. It's turkey time. Everyone's got some turkey in their belly. Let's drop some good liquid.
That sounds like a perfect plan to me. I'm saving my 15 for a little bit later, but I am really excited to try the. I haven't had it yet, but the Camp Nelson B, the other special release they did this year.
Yeah, on my list. Very cool warehouses. We did some cool research on those. So T, let's talk about the promo. What have people got to do to get involved today?
Yeah. So first thing, welcome everybody. Appreciate you taking time out of a Sunday. This is obviously collaborative effort right now, Baxus and BoozApp. So we're going to be giving out throughout this entire stream opportunities and private links to people who participate to be able to buy themselves a bottle of Russell's Reserve 15-year-old. For those who don't know, just as a little primer, Baxus is an online secondary marketplace for spirits. So that means that the bottles that you actually see on the Baxus.co website, those belong to private collectors. They're able to buy them, buy on the platform, sell on the platform. You can keep the bottles secured in one of our insured vaults, or you can have it shipped to your home, to your friend, wherever it is that you want to actually enjoy your whiskey. So those bottles are going to be made available via the Russell's 15s via the private link. And that's it. People will be able to, if they answer trivia questions, if they've added them to their BoozApp bar, which of course BoozApp is, if you don't have it yet, make sure that you download it. It's the ability to keep track of what you have at home, your wish list, what whiskeys you're looking for, and just make sure that you're, stay on top of what it is. If you try something by a friend's house and you're like, I've got to get one of those, now you know where to find it and you know what the fair pricing is. That's a really, really big part of a BoozApp, is making sure you know what the MSRP should be, what the average shelf price actually is, and then frankly, what, all of the users think is an actual fair price for a bottle.
Yeah, absolutely. So for all of us here on the stream today, make sure you can see that QR code down there in the bottom right. Check yourselves in, get yourself on that list. Make sure you've got your Russell's 15 on your wish list on BoozApp, and that'll get you into the running, working with this promo. So BoozApp, like Svi said, is this awesome platform that we use to get an idea of how bottles should be listed, their fair prices, sort of your companion as you walk into the liquor store going, am I getting ripped off here or am I getting a good deal? That sort of good benchmark thing. So today's all about that MSRP, getting those Russell's 15s into people's hands and letting them choose what they want to do with them.
Yeah, that's a really big part of it also. And that's a great point on BoozApp and Baxus also, is that, there's a lot of ways that people buy whiskey now, obviously from your store, there's online drops that the brands will try and do, but really important is like, what should I be paying for this? What is fair? And fair doesn't always mean MSRP. Sometimes it's, hey, this is, sells for way, way more and I can get it for less than what the market is, or this is what it's, should be worth. So sometimes you'll see, a bottle that the MSRP might be, I don't even know, a couple of $100, and like the users will be like, well, fair price is really $120. Like that's not really the fair, like even though that's the MSRP on this bottle, that's not really what it should be priced at. And sometimes, as we all know, you'll have bottles that are priced at a $250 MSRP that are selling on, secondary groups or at auction sites for a couple of hundred, sometimes thousands of dollars. And that's something that we want to make sure that, at least you have the information. You can obviously pay whatever you want. You can list your bottles for whatever you want, but we want to make sure that you have at least the proper information as to what people are paying for these bottles, and what people are looking to pay for the bottles.
Yep, absolutely, that transparency. So once again, if anyone has joined us here just after the stream started, make sure you guys check yourselves in. Make sure you've got Russell's 15 on your BoozApp list. We'll be having some private links headed out. We've got some trivia coming up today as well. Some 10 awesome questions I worked on to give you guys, any of you turkey nerds out there that really know your history or really know your releases. These will give you an extra chance at securing one of those 15s. So I think we're approaching the first round of drops. I think we are almost there. So make sure you guys are keeping an eye out on we're 5 minutes out from the first round. So make sure you guys are keeping an eye on your emails as well. Sometimes it heads to spam, so maybe just keep refreshing that as well. But over the course of the next hour and 15, your email and that trivia will be your best friend, give you the best in the running. So before we talk about what the 15 is, why is it so great, T? Like someone has just rated it pretty highly, right?
Yeah, so that's actually what's super cool is that the Russell's 15 was limited edition released this year, following on from the multiple batches of Russell's 13s that Wild Turkey released. But what was really, really fantastic about it and what was super cool was that, and I'll pull it out over here so people can see in case they haven't. So, it came out at 117.2 proof, selected from, I don't remember the exact number of barrels that went into the blend. Oh, and you probably have this information. I'm sure you have this information. And this bottle actually just won for Fred Minnick on Friday night, did his top 100 bottles of the year. And this bottle placed #1. This was the #1 whiskey of the year, according to Fred, which from most people who I know have had it and have had a chance to try it, that was something they were saying from the second that they had a chance to try it. But what was super cool and what I love is that kind of no matter whose list you're going off of this year, whether it was Fred Minnick's or David Tao, who writes for VinePair, and Frank Dobbins, Burb Your Enthusiasm, who writes for Uprocks, they actually voted the single Rickhouse Camp Nelson B as their bottle of the year. And these were really neck and neck. So whichever way you look at it, Wild Turkey was winning whiskey of the year one way or the other. They were really, really on their game this year, producing top quality stuff.
It's been an interesting pivot for the brand as well. It spent a long time almost like a B-tier distillery for a lot of people, sort of quietly putting out just stable 8-year, 12-year, 101 good quality, Jimmy Russell style whiskey, as we always like to refer to it, that proof at that point. But it's sort of in the last 5 years, people have really sat up and noticed that Turkey's consistency is actually its strength. That in a market of often declining whiskey, Turkey is still head and shoulders above everyone else in the consistency department. And I love that we're splitting hairs over a 15 and a single, and that single is almost like the cursed terroir word that comes into play with whiskey, but almost that terroir of a rickhouse, that we get that essence of what that rickhouse does to the barrels. Whereas the 15 is this much wider, often a lot older than 15. I think it's up to 19-year-old barrels in the mix, right? It gives the Russells a bit of a chance to throw something in and throw some higher proof out there, but still maintain that minimum 15-year age statement. We know time and time again how many of these brands like to throw out $300 MSRP non-age statement barrels and go, there's definitely some 20-year-old liquid in here. Don't worry about all the 5-year, right? But 15-year product at this kind of MSRP, winning these kind of awards, like Turkey's on track. Turkey's very much on track.
Yeah, and
thank you. First private links have been sent out, so guys, just keep an eye on your emails. Again, check your spam folders if anything's happened there. There might be some bottles out in the wild now.
So yeah, that's obviously those are, first of all, great points. And again, if you haven't, info@baxus.co, make ssure that's where you should have received your emails up until now, informing you. Keep an eye out for either from info or from another Baxus email where, like Owen said, if the first batch has gone out, so if you're eligible in the first round for Russell's 15 and MSRP, keep an eye over there. At the same time, I will say, obviously, I'm focused a little bit on the bottles in front of me, but at the same time, keep an eye on the marketplace. I know that we've done drops before of the 13s, the single rickhouses, the 15s. So I have a feeling that there will be collectors who have purchased them already that will probably be relisting. So even if you don't get a chance to snag one at MSRP, you're always able to to find them on the marketplace from other collectors at, again, whether you think it's fair, whether it's the market price. If you don't like it, you don't have to pay it. That's really the beauty. There's no, and your background, you come from the whiskey auction world.
Yes. Yes. So we've handled these bottles. These bottles are physically with us in the vaults. We've checked them ourselves. We've put the time and effort in. Auction houses, there's plenty of auction houses that do those kind of processes, but there's not as it's a lot more random, right? Like, we're very proud of the consistency that we bring with our vaulting system. So we are just about to head up onto our first round of trivia, which should be a relatively easy start. So make sure you guys, again, make sure it's on your wish list. Make sure you're paying attention. If you've got this up on a desktop, be ready to bring it up on your mobile. It's going to be first come, first served. Whoever gets that trivia question right first will be able to get that bottle. So get speedy. Think about the question. Don't panic. Don't choose the wrong answer. Think about it. Get the right answer. Get in there and get the bottle. All right. I think we are almost towards that. So coming from the auction background as well, we saw plenty of fake bottles. We're very proud that the bottles that we get, we source it from verified sources, that we do our background, do our research. So it's a big part of the business model, right? Yeah, no, that was always something for me that was, super important from the get-go, was making sure that the bottles were authentic, that they were being held somewhere, so that when you were doing transactions, because
like I said, there's a lot of ways that people trade, whether it's private groups on, online platforms and stuff where it's, it's not exactly legal the way that they do it over there. So there's always that risk of, okay, you have to pay the guy, hope that he sends the bottle, hope that it's real. There's a lot of risk when you're kind of going through that. And at the same time, there's, a certain amount of trust that goes into those markets. But there are plenty of people who are looking for, we have collectors who are much older. So they've got, incredible, you mentioned on the turkey front, like old dusty Austin Nichols turkey that they've had sitting in their basements for, there you go. Sitting in their basements.
All right, I think we are good to go with our trivia. So
let's go.
Let's get our first one going. So give it a quick 5-second countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How many generations of Russells currently work at Wild Turkey? So make sure you guys scan that QR code. There should be a link in chat as well. We've got the options. We've got 2, 3, 4, or 5. How many generations of Russells currently work at Wild Turkey?
And while you're answering this, one note as well, obviously scanning the QR. If you're on your phone and you have access to a computer or a second device, recommend tuning into the live stream on a computer or a second device so that you can always pull out. There's going to be a lot of little QR pop-ups throughout the event. Chances to scan, enter your answers, chances to submit information, and chances to win bottles. So if you can, double up, or so definitely double up.
Yep. And make sure you guys are answering that question in the link. Make sure you're not worrying about it in YouTube. Don't be thinking about throwing it in the comments. Make sure you get over to that link, get into that form, get the question answered there, and you'll be able to get through it. We'll be able to take a hold of that rare Russells 15.
This is really good. I'm sorry, Owen. I know that you're not sitting here with us right now, but this is my first time trying the CNB, the Camp Nelson B, and I'm going to have to go head to head and actually test it against the Russells 15.
All right, it's good stuff. All right, we are timed. That is the end of the first trivia question. Looks like the bottle managed to be grabbed. So yep, we've got our first Russells 15 trivia question out there. Congratulations to the winner.
Congrats. We've got a bunch more coming throughout the night, so stay active, stay on, like we said, stay on the stream, keep an eye out on the trivia, and if you haven't yet, download BoozApp. Make sure that you add the Russells Reserve 15 to your wish list on BoozApp for extra chances to purchase bottles.
So, of course, the correct answer to the question was 3. We've got Jimmy, Eddie, and we have Bruce. Bruce is the new up-and-comer. Generations was their big release of the year. The 3 of them working together to pick their favorite barrels and create something particularly special. So 3 generations, a big legacy at Russells Reserve. Of course, Jimmy starting way back, but Wild Turkey all the way back, long before it was called Wild Turkey. So fabulous institution the Russells are in Kentucky. So it'd be great to see what other Russells we get. If the 15 is going to be a continuous release, or if we're going to get some more batches of 13, or possibly even, I think we've heard rumors of maybe some higher age statements than just the 15 coming in the future.
Yeah, that's a great point also in general about Russells, is that they have obviously their core range, like you said, those stable, like delicious, just always good and consistent bottles. But I feel like a lot of brands, they try and do single barrel, or they try and do things because they're looking for a new marketing position, or they're looking to really jack up the prices on their core offerings. But I mean, one of the many things I love about Wild Turkey is you can get a rare breed, you can get a Kentucky Spirit, you can get yourself a Russells Reserve single barrel, you can get a Russells Reserve 10, $45, $50, $60, $75. Like most brands, when they go and start releasing single barrels or put a 10-year age statement on something, they're like, this is an $150, $200 product, and they're like, no, this is for the most part a shelf. You know what I mean? Like this is consistently on the shelf. This is something that we're going to always have with people. And
Russells 10 is certainly one of the more interesting options that we talk about consistency with Russells. That all the way back, Jimmy would talk about the fact that it's just 8-year 101 proof. That's how we work. We make a 101 proof product. Maybe we make an 80 proof product, but consistent liquid. And pretty much anywhere you go in the world, you can walk into some form of liquor store and you'll find a Russells Reserve, or either a single barrel or a 10-year-old, or you'll find a 101. The brand is pushed in such a way that you don't feel like you're going to be. You walk into a bar and you get a pour of a 101. You know that you're getting something better than the Jim Beam White or the Black Label you'd get in another bar. There's always that element of consistency, and it's amazing where these two Russell's core products sit in the market. That you can go, I want that higher proof single barrel, or I want that lower proof 10-year-old. They've created this really interesting, diverse mix to both palettes, and we were when we were looking at stock levels on the 10. It's incredible that a core product is actually consistently out of stock. It is frustratingly hard to get a hold of.
That was something that I was pretty surprised, because again, I see it on all the shelves, so I assume this is, you just call up the distributor, you're able to place an order, and they're like, it has been back ordered for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. But again, I mean, all that indicates is that there's a ton of demand for it, and I think that is something that Owen, you and I talk about this all the time, but like the quality to price ratio that has kind of undergone in the American whiskey market lately, global whiskey market really, not just American, has for the most part rapidly dropped off. The quality is great, but the prices are just moving way too high relative to the quality, and that's something that I've really always loved about, again, Wild Turkey and like the Russell's line in particular. I think even these two bottles, the Russell's 15 and the Camp Nelson B, the 13. So you're looking at like a $150, $250, and like $300 or something MSRP.
Yep.
As far as age statement, single barrel, single rickhouse, limited edition releases go, those are great prices, and especially for the bottles themselves.
Okay. And we talk about God knows how many brands now that with the NDP words are almost cursed, right? Plenty of people that claim they have Wild Turkey barrels that are 15 years of age, but actually were distilled somewhere else or distilled in Kentucky with a very Russell-like name, and they're considerably more expensive, $400, $500 north, and we're now finally in a market where those are starting to struggle and be difficult and not do the job. And Wild Turkey comes out kicking with just solid liquid at solid prices and a moderately sized release, enough that people can actually get a hold of these. Rather, the single rec houses are maybe a little bit more of an exception. They are limited by the size of the barrel, by the size of the actual physical warehouse. But the 15 is a large enough release that people will actually get to drink it. People will be opening and actually enjoying this liquid.
I spend a lot of time on whiskey Twitter, or whiskey X, and that's one thing that I can't even tell you the number of times, like when people get their hands on like a Russell's 15, like within a day or two, like it's open. Like you see the next post is them, getting together, posting it, like actually opening the bottle, drinking it with friends, hunting down seconds and thirds, again, to open it, not just to be like, okay, this is something that's going into my bunker, going to my, to the Baxus vault, but that being said, other than, a couple of the bottles that we've had the good fortune of opening and sharing, obviously my favorite way to drink whiskey is with other people. But in addition to that, like this is a bottle that when I managed to get an extra 2 bottles, like I put them into the vault, because it's not even a question of like, oh, okay, fine. Like, these will be worth more years later. They were whiskey of the year. Sure. That's fine. But it's more that this is one of the best bourbons I've had of like in recent memory, and everyone is opening them. So it's not like some of these other bottles where they release them and then, 5 years later, if they release 10,000 bottles, there's 9,900 still left because nobody's actually opening them because of the price point. Every bottle I see of this is getting opened. And so I'm like, okay, I need to put a couple of these away, because when I want to taste the Russell's 15 in 5 years, like it's going to be a lot harder to find.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think we're ready for our next trivia question. That brings up another potential winner for a 15. So we're ready to count down for the day, the next round of trivia. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So what was the first expression in the Masters Keep series? Was it decades? Was it the 17-year BIB? Was it revival? Or was it the 17-year 86.8 proof, that lower proof option? So make sure you guys are scanning the QR code. Don't answer it in the YouTube chat. Jump onto that QR code or the link. Answer the question there on the form. First one there grabs a hold of that bottle. Have you got a particular favorite from the Masters Keep series, do you reckon, T?
I'd have to... I'm trying to think.
I wonder if have you tried 1894, the Australian exclusive?
No, I have not. I was going through it. I'm like, I know that I tried them because I just had 2 different ones recently, and I'm trying to remember which ones they were. They were great, but I mean, I really like them, but come back to me on that. I'm going to get back to you because there was a Wild Turkey product I just had, but wait, there was an exclusive Master's Key for Australia.
I wondered if you were aware. 1894 was a Master's Keep edition exclusively released for the Australian market, and it came with the worst ever glue on the inside of the boxes. Every time you open them, they just immediately fall off. So I don't know if they cheaped out for the glue or if like coming on a boat all the way across to Australia, all the Master's Keeps just get ruined. But yeah, there is an official mess in this. If you want the full set in the series, you've got to come and get one from Australia that was released in 2017.
I'm a pretty avid collector, and I did not know about that. So, Owen, I'm gonna.
Maybe I'll find one for you one day. Maybe.
I was gonna say you're gonna have to hunt one of those down for me.
Absolutely. So, of course, the answer to this question was the 17-year 86.8 proof. That was the first edition in the Master's Keep series. Now, that bottle was picked up really quick hands. Someone asked the question really well. So that's another Russell's 15 in hands through our trivia. The 17-year 86.8, that was kind of their pioneering with the system. I believe it was the third release was the 17-year BIB. Can't quite remember 100%, but there's been some controversial bottles released in the Master's Keep series. Revival is always the one that everyone talks about as being very average, but very funnily, I've done quite a few tastings with people blind the whole Master's Keep lineup, and Revival actually rates quite well. So maybe it's the prejudice that everyone has of Wild Turkey and Sherry, but the blind palate can't tell it.
So, yeah, do you have any, like, I know there are certain distillers where I have like a specific note, like you mentioned the consistency. There's like one flavor note that I'm like, okay, there's, it's bourbon, there's a lot of rye, there's a lot of things that you'll typically pick up, but like one note that like when you taste it, you're like, I know what distillery this is from, or this reminds me of this distillery's distillate. Do you have that for Wild Turkey?
It's bourbon. I always find it a little bit harder to distinguish the difference between core distillery notes because, of course, making American whiskey, everyone is within such tight, constrained rules. I just find because of Turkey is just so well crafted, sort of puts bourbon has it by default has the caramel, oak, and vanilla flavors, right? The standard thing you get from virgin oak, making anything with corn, and because a lot of the Turkey products are well aged, they're good proofs. It just dials those up really well. It's maybe a little bit more of a savory style. If you think about Buffalo Trace, we get these very sort of sweet, very, very sort of sometimes almost sugary caramel profiles in the Buffalo Trace spirit, whereas Wild Turkey is maybe a little bit more meaty, a little bit more savory, a little bit more oak heavy, just because of that. Like they're not afraid to let it age, which could be, as we saw in the 13-year-old. I think there was 19-year-old barrels in the first batch, and potentially even 20-year-old liquid almost in some of the other batches as well. So that combination of a little bit more oak character in every Wild Turkey, that little bit more meaty, savory. You're getting a 101 pour when you go to bar. That's what's in your glass. It's a cracking little thing. And Turkey, I think, has just evolved, right? It went from certainly the 80s and the 90s, sort of the thing that you drank at college, right? Like, it's a wonderful story. A Kentucky gentleman told me at a tasting. He said he used to in I think the 60s or the 70s, they would go to parties on college campuses and things. And he would only go to the actual party if they were given the white meat. And they said, "Oh, we're bringing turkey tonight." And he said, "Oh, are you bringing the brown meat or the white meat?" And they said the brown meat, not coming. If it's white meat, that's turkey. Because the brown meat was the 80 proof dark label, and the white label was the 101 8-year. Yeah. So it was, you want to go to the parties that are serving the white turkey meat because you're getting 101 8 proof, you're going to have a great time and it's going to be some really good liquid, right? Lovely. This big, overzealous, big hat Kentucky gentleman at a show in Australia. It was a great little time.
I love that. So I know we're coming up on...
You can't beat turkey fans, right? They're their own breed.
And I know we're coming up on our next trivia question, but I will say the one note that I get consistently, because you're right, obviously, on the caramel and the how regular everything, kind of how consistent things are generally in bourbon with those flavors. You ever have Luden's, like a cherry lozenge, like a cherry throat lozenge.
Yes.
There is like a back palate kind of lingering finish on wild turkey that gives me like a sweet cherry, like obviously definitely on the hardiness and on the oak. But like when I taste that, I'm like, okay, this is turkey. So
absolutely.
I'd love to hear definitely in the comments if anyone else has a specific note that to them like screams wild turkey.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I think we're ready for the next trivia question. So again, we'll lead in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What was Wild Turkey's very first single barrel product? Of course, Turkey's been releasing single barrels not far after the original single barrel came about as part of our Blanton's, of course, was the very first. So this was a pretty cool release. Again, guys, make sure that you are scanning that QR code. Make sure it's not happening in, you're not answering in YouTube. Make sure you've got your sign up. Make sure you've checked in. Make sure you've got your Russell's 15 on your wish list. Maybe also worth throwing on some single Rickhouse there. You never know what might end up dropping. And again, make sure you're keeping an eye on the Baxus marketplace. Bottles will be thrown up by collectors and by owners of bottles who are sort of looking to sell some stuff during the stream.
I saw there were definitely some power users from Baxus who are live on the stream, so I would not be surprised if they're listing their bottles while this is going on as well.
Yes, absolutely. So the options we've got are Kentucky Legend, Kentucky Spirit, the Russell's Reserve Single Barrel, and the Heritage. So, of course, the answer is B, Kentucky Spirit. It was an early 1990s, I believe the first Kentucky Spirits came out in 92 or 93. Kentucky Legend was actually a little bit of a red herring. There was two versions of Kentucky Legend. There was a non-age statement, like batched version for the duty-free market, and then there was the notorious donuts, and they were single barrels, but they came way later in the 1990s. So Kentucky Spirit did beat it by a little bit of time.
It's true. Not enough brands have fun with the shapes anymore. I wonder if now that we're in this kind of...
Yes, of course. There was the iconic fantail, right, from Kentucky Spirit for quite some time. Yeah. I remember speaking to Eddie actually, and he said, we're all the Australians loved the fantail. They absolutely loved the design. And then everyone said, where's the fantail design? And between the frequency at which that design would just have things chip off the side in transit, and actually it became too expensive. The glass maker, because they made that design just for wild turkey, just couldn't keep making them. They were too complex, too hard. That's why we've now got these slightly more uniformed, probably a little bit more boring, big fat dumpy Kentucky Spirits, right? But
yeah, well, I wonder about that.
We need some more fun back.
No, but I wonder about that. Now that we're in this, again, the whiskey markets are obviously entering the next cycle, or next stage of the cycle, where we're starting to notice, price bottles that were exorbitantly priced are coming down in price or are sitting on shelves way longer. Obviously, if you look at the stuff in the 60s and 70s, all those crazy decanters, because brands were competing for shelf space and trying to catch people's eyes. I wonder if we'll see a little bit of a revival of that, of not just on the age statements, but okay, we need to capture attention. We need to build something that, there was a bottle in the marketplace that, the Jim Beam I Dream of Genie bottle that you gave me the background and history on. And that is now, first of all, it's such a ridiculously cool bottle, but it's also so iconic because it has now become a cultural artifact for, I Dream of Genie. And I think that's just super cool. And I hope at least that brands, rather than just trying to focus on, I hope that we see a little bit more creativity, that it's what we're going to do, if we're doing a limited batch run or we're doing something small enough, we're going to get some cool bottles and something that stands out on the shelf.
I think we're already starting to see that. I was very lucky. I had some family come over from Ohio to bring me some Christmas gifts, and they brought some bourbon with them. And I asked them to bring the Oscar Pepper Barrel Proof, the new release. And I think the decanter is beautiful. It's a really well put together bottle for $60 US. It's great liquid. It's great design. It's not too big. It's not too small. It has the ability to be reused. I think we'll see a little bit more of that. Maybe not a race car filled with liquid again, but something with a little bit more intense. So make sure you guys are make sure it's a quick one. Make sure you guys are keeping an eye on your emails. We've got private links constantly going out all the way through the stream. Make sure you've checked in with that QR code. You got your Russell's 15 on your wish list. There's a good chance that you can get a private link through that way. And yeah, keep the finger on the trivia with the trivia. We'll have some more bottles going out.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. Just so that in case it wasn't clear, you can win bottles and you can get the opportunity to purchase the Russell's 15, not just from answering the trivia question. Like we said, make sure if you're on the stream, you have a chance. If you have the Russell's 15 and other bottles on your wish list on BoozApp, you have a chance. If you're buying other bottles on the marketplace, you have a chance. Like there's a lot of things you can be doing. So, as long as you're here, you've got a shot. And then there's other ways you can definitely, get yourself entered a couple more times. Yeah, actually on that note, it's a really good point. The Jimmy Red, their new 7-year wheated that they did, in that kind of moonshine-looking growler cut. That was really cool. Also, you're right. We are starting to see a little bit more creativity. I like that there are brands that are doing this. I'm looking over here at some of the bottles, inside the actual safe. I don't know if everyone can see it, but this is, really one of my favorite things. Like an actual whiskey safe, like straight on.
Yeah,
full on lock, seal, the works, like bolts and everything. Great way to show all your friends what you have open, and then make them have to ask twice before they start, slipping away with some of your best bourbons.
Yeah, certainly. I think we are game for our next trivia. So I'll count us down again to the next one. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wild Turkey Tradition was released in the 1990s exclusively for duty free. But what proof was it bottled at? So guys, make sure you scan that QR code. It'll be the first person to get that correct answer through, get it into their cart and get it all the way transacted. So make sure you're not answering it here in YouTube. Make sure it's actually on that link. It's in the form. That way could be the first person to get a hold of it. Yeah,
so Owen, you want to read them out the 4 options?
For sure. So we have 80 proof, 100 proof, 120 proof, and 101 proof. So Tradition, an early 1990s duty-free bottling. Sorry, I believe it was almost all the way through the 1990s. But what proof was it actually released at? Have you managed to try a Tradition before?
I have had a Tradition. I've been very lucky. I have some, different groups of friends that have different, whiskeys that are really their thing. So one friend is a particular fanatic for Dusty Turkey, and I've had a chance to try some pretty incredible bottles. That's what I was trying to remember on the Revival set, because I had it, but at the same tasting, I was also trying a couple of like Japan only exclusive releases, and there was one of them that blew my mind, and I was just trying to, I'd have to go back and actually check my notes. That's a great thing. Yeah, I would say the great thing is getting to try whiskeys. The tough part about whiskey tastings is it's unless for me at least, I'm writing things down. I can't always remember which was the one that blew me away.
Yes, easy to forget. So, of course, the answer to quiz 4, 101 proof. It is the classic turkey number. It is the number that Jimmy, Eddie maybe a little bit less so, but certainly Jimmy and Bruce absolutely love. 101 is where turkey sings. There's a reason why they've made that number absolutely their own. So the first person who managed to get that 101 proof quiz all the way through will have managed to snag that 15.
It's true. So it's a great point.
I believe the Tradition is always known for me as the jelly bean, but I've heard people call it the kidney bean. It's that wonderful, silly little duty-free. I think they were about 95 to about 98-ish. Very delicious. Really, it's just really good vintage, 101 proof turkey. Like it's got that dusty old note.
Yeah, well, and that's such a good point that the Wild Turkey and by extension the Russells have really come to own 101 proof. And yeah, when I hear 101, my first guess, if someone says anything is 101, I'm going to guess that it's turkey. And that's actually
distilleries have claimed their numbers, right? Of course, 107 is the notorious Weller, which now becomes the Buffalo Trace. Weller, Antique 107. Everyone can bottle at 100 proof. Everyone can bottle at 100 proof and BBIB and do all these things. But that one extra proof point, that belongs to turkey. That's their 0.5% of alcohol. Yeah,
and I don't remember, but we'll save that for another stream. But yeah, no, that's great. Such a good point. I guess that's something that if you are in the business now and you are producing stuff, and maybe especially if you're starting out and you're a non-distilling producer, you're still waiting for your own liquid to mature, I think that's actually a pretty good strategy. Not everything has to be single barrel, not everything has to be barrel strength. Like find a proof and like stake your claim to it now. That's a really good way to build consistency and brand recognition.
Consistency, comfort, like there are so many parallels in the booze industry. I think from talk about Springbank in Scotland, it's about that consistency. Good liquid will always rise to the top, regardless of the market conditions, right? As long as you make whiskey that people want to drink, you'll be able to, and as long as you are conscious of the cost that it is to actually create that liquid, you'll be able to weather pretty much anything. As we look towards these slightly difficult downturns in the market, which are certainly coming, Turkey looks pretty okay. They don't jump out as a brand that will be struggling, as we're already starting to see these closures to distilleries. So it begs the question: what comes next for Wild Turkey? Where do we go?
Again, what's really cool about Wild Turkey also is that they have so much history that they can play upon. They've done their Bourbon Baron releases, so the Old Rippy, the Bond and Lillard, the WB Saffel. So it's not only it's really cool for them because they have so much tradition they can play on as well. If they have barrels now that have aged longer than they normally would, and they're like, okay, these aren't the right fit for the Russell's lineup, or these aren't the right, they can always look to another historic brand that has been, that was produced there, or that they own, brands that they own, and do something with that, which I think is also pretty unique in that obviously a ton of, distilleries have history and they've bought up old brands, but Wild Turkey, it's like Wild Turkey having been produced there and it just changing the ownership and then moving from the Austin Nichols to, it was Pernod and then Campari, like there were all these, different owners throughout the time. They have a lot of history to play on, whether it's, again, bottle naming, bottle shapes, brown label, the 8-year, the 101, like there's a lot that they can do. And it's a really good point. I mean, what was the Wild Turkey I just saw? We had one on the marketplace for a bit. Somebody bought it. The flask, that little hip flask Wild Turkey. Yes. Also. Like, they've just done so many, and how could I forget the old decanter series, the actual decanters, the full-on giant, hand painted ceramic turkey decanters. Like I don't know that we'll ever see those again, and arguably for good reason.
No lead.
Decanters are beautiful and a nightmare. They're a beautiful nightmare. They are impossible to transport. They're ceramic, so there's a porousness, so they unfortunately end up tending to evaporate faster. The corks never stay intact. But they look really cool sitting on somebody's shelf, like even when they're empty afterwards. Like yeah.
All right, guys. So make sure, same conversation again. Make sure you are checked into the stream. Make sure you got Russell's 15 on your BoozApp list. We're going to go through and do another trivia in just a second. So as a reminder, when you see that trivia pop up, make sure you scan the code. Make sure you click that link within the trivia. Don't be answering the question here on YouTube. First one who gets that answer correct will be taken up to the link to grab that bottle.
Awesome.
So, ready to count us in for our next trivia? So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Before distilling their own, Wild Turkey sourced their rye whiskey from a Maryland distillery and a Pennsylvania distillery. Which Pennsylvania distillery did they source from? Was it Guggenheimer Distillery, Publica, Michter's, or Old Overholt? So, of course, rye whiskey, big history in New England, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. Really crazy, big producers. Of course, you've got to try some really early pre-pros, not too recent, not that long ago, right, T? So, are there any? Not that there's really any names still out there today, but are there any, Pennsylvania or Maryland distilleries that jump out as great for you?
Modern, like you said, modern. No. Like I'm sure there are, but I'd have to do some thinking. Old Overholt was interesting because so we had this was at right around Repeal Day, so December 5th. I was invited by the Vintage Whiskey Society to their annual pre-prohibition tasting, Repeal celebration, and I mean there were a bunch of interesting bottles, but one of them that we had was a 1911. It was a quart of Old Overholt that was most likely, because they had mixed out the bottled and bond, was most likely a blend from the two different distilleries that they had produced and sourced from. You were doing some digging for me as to why they struck out the bottled and bond and actually had a reprint over the label.
Always looking through. So just a quick one. The answer of this one was Michter's. Michter's, I believe. Jimmy was quoted as the best rye is made in Pennsylvania. Why would I make rye myself? And then over time, Wild Turkey did move to making their own rye as Michter's sort of struggled and closed down. But Publica was a big industrial producer. Guggenheimer, I believe, was closed in the early 30s, somewhere around there. And Overholt, again, National Distillers label, but actually didn't produce a lot of their own rye. So the answer to quiz 5 was Michter's.
Yeah, and obviously now the Michter's brand, not with any of its whiskey, et cetera, but the Michter's brand, of course, still exists. It's thriving, better than ever now down in Kentucky. Last night, actually, I was talking about it. There was an article that David Tao ran on VinePair for the Mount Rushmore of bourbon and the Mount Rushmore of rye, and he asked a couple of us, what are your top 4 basically? If you have to put them up on a monument, your top 4 ryes are the things that stand out. And one of them on my list was the 2008 Michter's 25-year-old rye. Obviously not from the original Michter's distillery per se, but under that new brand, the Magliocco ownership, and they've just consistently produced really, I think, some of the also just absolute top-notch, top-quality whiskey, great ryes, great bourbons, but also got their start sourcing like a lot of distilleries. When they didn't have their own distillate and their own aged product, they were sourcing from other places.
Well, of course, the iconic thing is that the Michter's founders were using Julian Van Winkle for some of their early stuff. So there's suggestions that some of the early 10s were like 19-year-old Stitzel-Wellers actually, and some really crazy stuff of that Lawrenceburg era bottlings. I can't even imagine what a 25-year rye from 2008 is like, considering it could be a number of genuinely phenomenal closed distilleries, because not a lot of people were making rye whiskey in the 80s and certainly not in the 90s. So it's bucket list stuff, that's for sure. We'll definitely be able to get there at some point. So for anyone else that's just joined us here on the stream, make sure you guys are checking in and make sure you have Russell's 15 on the list. We'll be dropping bottles on the Baxus marketplace as well. Keep refreshing, keep having a look as you do. Some of those bottles will be going up from collectors, so a couple may be above MSRP, but those will be the bottles that are being listed by those watching the stream. We're dropping bottles today at MSRP directly from us using either the trivia, or you'll be receiving some private links to your email. Keep an eye on both your spam folder and your primary, your promotions, etc. I know the tech can be a little bit sort of overwhelming sometimes, but just engaging should get you some good chances at some bottles.
Yeah, and again, thank you to everyone. This is, again, I'm on the East Coast. I'm sure there are people I know there are people from all over the US and definitely the world. So 6:45 over here on a Sunday evening. We really appreciate everyone just taking the time, tuning in. If it is a good time and you're in a good place, I hope that you're enjoying a drink while we're doing this and really going through it. And we appreciate it. And as Owen mentioned, there will be some other bottles that we ourselves are listing. We're actually giving everyone who's on here an opportunity. We're doing some sneak peeks. So Baxus does, we've done a series of barrel picks, single barrel picks that we've done with distilleries. And a bunch of those haven't actually been released to the public yet, but we're pretty appreciative for everyone who's on the stream tonight. So we're making sure that a couple of those get hidden and listed onto the marketplace. So keep an eye out. We have an old Route 8 from Augusta, our own pick of a very old St. Nick straight out of Bardstown, a 9-year-old, and our what else? Oh, we got our Wilderness Trail. Oh, that was, oh my god. Again, Owen is not based near me, which is good, because otherwise we'd spend our whole day drinking and debating these things. But
yes, absolutely. So for anyone, I see a couple of questions asking about how Baxus works. So if you've picked up a bottle, you might be a little confused. It doesn't sort of immediately take you to a shipping and a checkout system. You grab a hold of that bottle. You can then throw it in the vault, and then you can actually go through a redemption process, and that will have the bottle shipped to you. You don't have to permanently vault it. Like it's not left here in the vault. Once you get a hold of that bottle, go through the checkout process, pop it in your vault, go to your account, and then just hit redeem. And then it'll ask you for the shipping. It will give you all those kind of details, and then you can get the bottle over to you. Or if you feel like it, just hold the bottle there. We can ship it to you way in the future, or you can relist it on the marketplace at any time.
I would actually just point out that if you're thinking that you're going to buy a couple of bottles to ship at once, I would suggest that while you're checking out, just click Vault for now. This way you'll save on shipping when you ship a couple of bottles at once, instead of having to go through and ship each one every time. So you can drop it in your vault and redeem them all together later.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we're ready for question number 6. Go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What year did Pernod Ricard purchase Austin Nichols? So that was the story, that Pernod Ricard went along and purchased the Austin Nichols Corporation. Was it 1976, 1980, 1982, or 1985? Notoriously, Pernod still retained the Austin Nichols branding. So this one will be a little bit harder. This one is probably not something that a lot of people have directly off the top of their head, but Pernod was then, I believe, purchased by Campari. Was in somewhere about 2006, 2007.
They sold off the Wild Turkey brand.
Yes, they did, but they retained. I believe they actually retained the Austin. There was some sort of strange Austin Nichols turkey split, or
definitely possible. We'll have to look into this is always the fun part about whiskey, is you don't only need the timeline of like where the brand was produced, but who owned it, because everything is just a giant web of corporate ownership.
The beauty of who made it, where did it come from, and was it under the actually correct brand? So looks like that bottle was grabbed. So that was really awesome. The answer for this, of course, was 1985. Is the year that Pernod Ricard. 1980. My apologies. That was me having my own evidence wrong. It was a big deal when Pernod purchased Austin Nichols. They'd kind of been really interested in the company for quite some time. Pernod, big drinks producer, of course. They absorbed quite a lot of the Seagram's warehousing and that kind of thing, and when Seagram's dissolved in 2000. So yeah, the fun corporation, really interesting one. Yeah.
Well, and I was going to say the trivia questions are great, but I'm so nervous about, like, I have like a couple of like random fun facts, and I'm like, wait, I don't want to spoil any questions in case they're in there. So
I know. I apologize. I had one of my incorrect dates in my head. Okay. These are great. Trying to pull a whole Wild Turkey timeline in my head. I know we've got to dance around our trivia, so we don't give our conversation, so we didn't give too much fun stuff away.
No, but that's Austin Nichols. Well, that's even I saw one just recently for the first time. I hadn't seen one in person. One of the things, like you had mentioned, the Lawrenceburg Michters, that like one of the biggest indicators that you can use when trying to date a bottle, and this is such an important detail as well, because like Owen mentioned, all of the bottles themselves actually come into the Baxus vault. Like that's why you'll notice when you click on a listing on the marketplace, you'll see a 360-degree scan, which is part of our authentication process. It's how we analyze all of the data on it and make sure that everything is correct. But one of those things is always if the location changes. And so the Austin Nichols label in the 60s, and I can't remember exactly when, switched from saying Brooklyn, New York on the Wild Turkey bottles to the New York Wild Turkey bottling. And so that is always it was my first time ever getting to see a Brooklyn, New York, like that the OG Austin Nichols Wild Turkey.
It's such a fun story, and it mirrors so much of what we see in the liquor industry, that you start as like a grocery store and a wine wholesaler and a wine spirits, whatever seller. And then, because of course, notoriously the distilleries were just industrial producers of alcohol, a lot of the branding actually came down to the stores that were choosing to sell it. If you go all the way back, you talk about big players like Gordon MacPhail were essentially just getting casks from local distilleries and just selling them by like the whole thing about a whiskey jug is your little ceramic jug you would take up to the grocery store, and you just turn the tap on the barrel, and that was your whiskey you took home for the week. So the distilleries, it's certainly something we've seen in the last 20, 30 years, have grown from being basically just industrial producers of alcohol to being their own sort of like Disneyland playlands of look at the brand I own. I mean, we look at, when we talk about brands, we look at something like Heaven Hill, which has like 30 brands or something, 40 brands of different labels, of different ways of releasing basically the same mash bill, but at different proofs or different ages, and they're entirely drastically different products. We don't even have we don't have the conversation that Larceny sits in the same category as an Old Fitzgerald, right? Because they're just so uniquely apart, yet it's the same mash bill, and sometimes it's similar proofs as well. So it's Austin Nichols kind of evolved from that grocer. Then Pernod comes along and they put it big front and center, and it's like, look at what we are, we're Wild Turkey. It's good fun.
Yeah, well, I think that's actually, and that speaks to a couple of different points, but one of them being, the importance when everyone says, oh, a single rickhouse, well, what does that mean? Why does that matter? But when you think about, the larceny versus the Old Fitzgerald, things that may have the same mash bill and be similar proofs and potentially even similar ages, like again, you don't know what's necessarily blended in, or if they're single barrels, obviously they're single barrels, you don't know what age they're bottled at, but the location of where they're actually stored, because so many distilleries in Kentucky have warehouses and facilities in different locations, like which have entirely unique and distinctive climates. And that is also something that like actually has a major impact on what the flavor profile developed over there as it matures.
Sorry, Case, it's time for our next trivia. So this is going to lead into much more of our vintage style of questions. So I'll count us in again. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. From 1989 to 1991, Wild Turkey bottled a special Cuvée edition of their 12-year-old. Which country was the product exclusively produced for? Was it for France, Portugal, Canada, or Italy? As a reminder, make sure you scan that QR code or you click that link. Don't be answering it down in YouTube. Make sure you hop over there. Get that into cart first. So the Cuvée edition, have you come across it before?
I have had it. I was going to ask, have you ever had it?
No, it's again way off on my bucket list. I don't think I've even seen one in person. It's a serious rarity of the 12. It's so hard to find.
We had at least one come through the vault at some point, but I believe it was snatched up relatively quickly once it was listed on the marketplace, and not by me, as much as I would have liked to.
It's definitely one I wish I was getting a hold of. It's on the list. I know a couple of very enthusiastic collectors down under here that probably have one vaulted away, but when you release it in a very short period of time for a very specific market, plenty of people will drink them. So, of course, the answer there is France. Cuvée, France. So maybe Canada caught a couple of people out with that French combination, but yeah. I believe it was imported in co-part with the La Maison de Whiskey. They were a big component, big proponent of a lot of spirits in France. And the Cuvée was a special release exclusively for the French market. So that's another 15 in someone's hands there.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think if I'm seeing a couple of links have gone out to different people, so it seems like there's been a couple of people who have had the opportunity on both some of these trivia questions and also, like we said, just being tuned into the live stream and having bottles added onto their, again, not just into your wish list, which is what you need for the minimum qualification, but as Owen said, we do drops, giveaways, surprises, these types of things as often as we can. Like we said, what's super exciting about the collectors and a lot of the people we know is not just that they have built up these massive collections, but that we've had the good fortune of being able to try some of these incredible whiskeys that were released well before I was born and Owen was born, and having that opportunity. And that's because whiskey is always best when shared. So that's a big part of what we like to do. Also, we like to make sure that people have the opportunity to buy these bottles or to try them or to get together with other people and actually taste it, because I think it's actually been more publicly discussed, especially now. I've seen it a lot on Twitter and on Facebook, but the modern day Van Winkle releases are good. They're good whiskey. They're not the Van Winkle that people used to talk about as being like the thing that put it on the map. It's not the original Spitzel Weller juice and the Boone and all of the other things that were being bottled in the medley. So it's not, when you think about that, when you realize that it's like not the same thing, like it's almost like an homage, to the whiskey that was produced. It might have the same mash bill, it may have the same, but we were just talking about the climate has such an impact. Who the distillers are, the stills themselves, like all of those things have such a factor that it's it's like people kind of they go crazy for these things, and it's like, well, I prefer again a Dusty's even the 80 proof, or the 8-year 101 or one of these things, because it's like you're tasting that moment in time, or that that element before it was called the industrialization of kind of Pappy that we've kind of gotten into.
Yeah, for sure. And again, brand versus distillery, right? It's sometimes the Pappy story just feels like it's more of the myth has become actually greater than the legend. It's almost into the stratosphere now of what people, the bottles will never ever live up to whatever hype people have this now. I mean, like I said, my family come over from Ohio, and my uncle, who's not really a bourbon drinker, drinks a bottle of bourbon at a time, immediately went, is this as good as Pappy? Because even as someone who doesn't really understand the wider industry, that's their benchmark. How does this compare? How is this the unicorn, or is this something that I can get more available?
I agree, and I thought all of it was hype, and then I had a Stitzelweller 20 and a 17-year red wax, and I was like, oh, okay, actually they were right. I get where they're coming from. But that's, again, the beauty of that is that those bottles are now sitting on my wish list on BoozApp, that I'm like, okay, if and when I ever come across these, and if somebody has them open, for sure, but if they're there and I have something I can trade for them or something that they want, those are on my whiskey bucket list.
Absolutely. All right, I think we are ready for question number 8 on our next trivia. So count us in again. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What year was the cheesy gold foil labeling introduced for the 12 year? So what was the first year of launch that the cheesy gold foil came about? Was it 1985, 1982, 1988, or 1989? So cheesy gold foil, the iconic version of the 12 year, as it implies, cheesy gold. It was this one of a garish, very flashy, very reflective gold labeling foil on the bottles. I believe we actually do have some listed on the marketplace, so there's always a chance to go back and grab some vintage. But yeah, so I think that one went super duper quick.
Well, I will say, I know for a lot of collectors and drinkers, that is that bottle marks the peak, like the absolute pinnacle of dusty bourbon, of the 80s and 90s era bourbon. Yeah,
for sure. We'll try not to give too much away, because I believe one of the questions will be coming up, but certainly that era had some really cool production changes that made it great. So of course the answer there, first year it was released was 1985. So the first cheesy gold foil was 85. I believe they then started phasing out in 1992, somewhere around that. Before that, and there's been a load of different versions of the 12 at the same time, the beyond duplication and the split labels and the faux split labels and all these sorts of funky terminology that the turkey nuts love to give their bottles to kind of differentiate between things. But yeah, cheesy gold foil, often heralded as the crown glory of those 12s. Do you know why? Do you think there's a particular reason?
There's a couple of factors that play into it. The source of the distillate itself, and particularly some of the vintages that are known, the source was, again, of that era and oeuvre of whiskeys that are, that there's nothing like it. Particularly, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was the 85 and the 88 shared a source. I think it was. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say, because this is always one of the things is like how much of this is accurate information versus legend or whatever, and this is something that the whiskey industry thrives on. I'm not going to say where, but I believe it was the 85 and the 88 had the same source. I'll do some of my own research and double check. And again,
so my understanding of the 12 cheesy golds, so certainly as we get towards the later 80s and the early 90s, is more than anything, it's just this massive glut. We get into that huge overproduction of the 60s and 70s and the massive downturn of the 70s, 80s, and 90s that I believe, again, shout out to David Jennings. His Rare Bird content is just flawless. One of his reviews was, I believe, in 88, where he compared it to some of the earlier mid-80s cheesy golds. And notably, the 88 was deeper and darker and presumably had much, much older stock than just 12 years. And we are very blessed, and often kind of goes under the radar, that we can still purchase 80s and 90s over-aged, often actually non-age statement products, because it made more sense to call it a non-age statement than a 7-year-old if you're putting 18-year-old barrels of liquid into a vatting, right? So funky styling.
Yeah, but it's also so funny how the markets have changed. If you go back to that same era, the early 90s era, with the height of the Japanese exports of American bourbon, and you talk to the producers back then, a lot of the whiskeys are actually understated. And I don't just mean in the sense that, obviously if you're making a blend, then you can only put an age statement as the youngest whiskey in the blend. But there will be single barrels where they'll say single barrel 19 year, and they're like, yeah, that was actually 22, 23, 24 years old. But like we assumed, versus the single malt or the Scotch market where things go for 20, 30, 40 years, that if people saw a 25-year-old bourbon, they'd get freaked out.
Yes.
They'd assume it was too oaky, so they actually just said, because legally you just have to write the youngest age. Like you could write that something is younger than it is. You just can't write that it's older. And so that was funny, is like if you find specific cask numbers of like a 17-year, you're like, actually that's a 24-year-old. Similar to the way that the Glendronach had that on the Scotch side, where there's
always debate, and I will always stand on the other side of that debate. We won't even go there with the 2020, the 2018s, the 19s, the 20. Don't pull up the chart. Don't even go there.
No, I'm saying I'll go toe to toe with you on this when we do our Scotch call. Because you cannot bottle whiskey that was not. You cannot have whiskey of a certain age if it was not distilled that many years before.
But SWA rulings are that you have to have a certain amount of liquid of that age statement to call it that age statement. So if it's an 18-year-old, there has to be 18-year-old liquid, which means it went into tank.
No, because they weren't single barrel.
See, this is of course. Of course. All right, well,
we'll go through it later.
Bourbon market. That's good. Yes. So glut era. Of course, the notable ones that I particularly love is Old Grandad. There's a whole bunch of like late 80s, early 90s Old Granddads out there that are just so dark, so rich. I'm very lucky that I bought a couple of bottles from like Yellowstone from the early 90s, which are actual Yellowstone distillery in Louisville before it closed, and they were just dumping barrels into the vattings of like, we're closing this distillery, we're chunking, we just don't need this liquid, let's get rid of it, whatever we can do to get rid of it as cheap as possible. So those, like I mentioned those before, those donuts, those Wild Turkey donuts, the single barrels, apparently Jimmy had put some 15 to 20-year-old barrels in there, but they were still non-age statement. They were just so easy to just one solid release, one label, single barrel, and then handwrite the proofs. Any more details than that, too much effort, too much labor, get the liquid out the door. So, all right, I think we're ready for our next trivia. So our count is in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In 1984, the first stainless steel fermenters were installed at Wild Turkey, slowly phasing out their original wooden ones. What type of wood were these original fermenters made from? So cypress, pine, cedar, or white oak. So this is kind of some of the conversation we've alluded to previously. Some of the big production changes that happened at Wild Turkey is they started changing from those organic, those natural wood fermenters that had a lot of lactobacillus, a lot of kind of natural wild yeasts going on, to stainless steel, which is a clean, sterile, easy to disinfect kind of thing. And the spirit changes. There's no way around that. Pre 84 distilled turkey will absolutely taste, considerably different from post 84. So they began swapping out the fermenters bit by bit. So I think it was all the way up until like the early 90s was the final one, finally fully disconnected. But what wood was that with those fermenters made from is the real question.
Next time we do this, I need to bring my phone so I can play too. These are great, Owen.
Got to work through it, right? So, of course, the answer is cypress wood. So pine looked just too frail, too difficult to work with. White oak is the traditional generic catch-all term, right, that we call American oak casks. But yes, cypress wood was the type of oak that they typically used for those wood fermenters beforehand. So we've got, I think, just had from the team, we've had, I think, almost 40 or 50 bottles of Russell's already sold so far, total Russell branded products. So that's, with that trivia in the bag, there's at least another one going out to the trivia winner. So again, guys, make sure you're checked in, make sure you got Russell's 15 on your wish list on BoozApp. Keep an eye on those emails. You might be getting a private link coming through. Check your spam, it might be in there. Just keep an eye on, as you can see.
Yeah, and I mean, there were definitely, obviously, they use cypress over there. There were definitely distilleries that use cedar as well. Cedar is obviously also definitely one that has been used for the fermenters and the tons.
Yeah, it's an interesting style. Like, there's not too many distilleries, I believe, in the States really at all using wooden fermenters left. Pretty much everyone by default buys stainless steel, but it's better. That's where I stand for. It's an absolute pain to clean, but you get so much more of that organic mix happening. But also, it means there's no consistency. It's much harder to make the same liquid you did last week, right?
Right. Yeah. No. I guess it's I guess that it flows off that question of sour mash versus sweet mash as well. Like what are you leaving behind versus what are you losing when you go purely stainless steel and everything gets absolutely drained out of there and completely hosed down and cleaned down, and the goal of stainless, exactly you said, is perfect disinfecting with nothing left.
Yep.
So you've left no little trace of what's been before. So I'm actually going to comment just quickly, Owen, on the Russell's 15 versus Camp Nelson B debate, as I've been for scientific research purposes going back and forth throughout the course of this call. So the first thing, obviously, on the color is when you look at the Camp Nelson B, like this looks like your standard golden, slightly orange hued, like this is your standard bourbon. This is like, obviously, when you pour the 15, if you told me that this was aged in a port, like a ruby port or a sherry cask, I would have believed it in a second. Like there's such a deep, rich red color to the 15, which again, and I've seen 15-year-old whiskey and you've seen 15-year-old whiskey, like does lead me to believe that there were absolutely older casks that were blended into this mix. Because that color is, again, I don't know what Rick has, they pulled them from or whatever, but that is such a dark, rich color. And the flavors, go along with that. One of the main notes I heard on the 15, which I really like, is sometimes I find that when a whiskey goes for too long, it gets too oaky. It happens, bourbon specifically, because of the virgin charred oak and because of the proof that it goes into the cask and the mash bill being 51% corn. What's amazing about the 15 is that it has deep, rich flavors, but it's not an over oakiness. It's a leather. It's a tobacco, like the tobacco leaf. It's like there's so many other dark, and it's so weird. But I use like there's like colors almost to the flavors, like when you're drinking whiskey, like dark brown flavors that go into it, like dark like cola and other things that you're getting over there in cocoa. And I just think that that's so cool compared to the Camp Nelson B. But, and I'm going to go back and forth at least one more time, I think I might actually, having previously been on the Russell's 15 bandwagon of saying this absolutely must be whiskey of the year and bourbon of the year, I might be shifting to the Camp Nelson B camp. I am shockingly surprised that there is definitely something in the flavoring over there that is taking me towards and don't get me wrong, like I said, if anyone who gets one of these bottles at MSRP wants to flip it on Baxus, I will buy it off of you afterwards, because like I said, I need a couple of these that I can put away for myself. But the same for the single rick house, because I have to say this is really, there's something else to this. There's something sweet, but not in that typical vanilla and caramel sense. There's something like actually unique and well, definitely younger that I'm getting on this. That like I said, for scientific purposes, I'm going to need to research this a little bit more.
I would assume there's much younger barrels in the single rick house. Absolutely. Like an age statement, but Turkey shines in whatever capacity. So just to reiterate, guys, we've had quite a good substantial amount of Russell's products sold, including tons of 15s. Single rick houses have been there as well. We've been emailing links out to the single rick house and the 15. If you guys take a look at the marketplace, there are single rick houses up there now as well. Some great sales so far. Some great bottles in people's vaults. In people's wallets. We're about to run through our final trivia question of the day. So again, make sure you guys have got your check-in down there at the bottom. Make sure you've got Russell's 15 on your BoozApp list. Just to make things quicker, maybe make sure you've got your Baxus signed in as well. Make that checkout process a lot easier. And then we'll go and run through our final trivia question. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The first Russell's Reserve was 10 years old, and it was bottled at 101 proof. What year was this introduced? So maybe I read that a little bit better. So the very first Russell's Reserve was a 10-year-old expression, and it was bottled at 101 proof, as opposed to the 90 proof that we see the 10-year-old at today. But what year was that 10-year-old at 101 proof introduced? Have you tried some of the first 10-year-old?
No, this is on my turkey, and I believe you sent me a picture. I think was it when you were doing during David Jennings tasting, the Rare Bird 101 tasting?
That's it. Yep.
Yeah. So David, for those who don't know, is just absolutely like an expert, just completely like really passionate about the Wild Turkey brand and its history and its bottlings, and most of the information, the ability to decipher a laser code or any of those things really are thanks to him. He spent a lot of time and effort putting this together. He's published books on it. He leads, obviously Turkey tastings. Owen got to attend one virtually, which I was incredibly jealous of. And then he showed me the bottles they were drinking, and I got even more jealous. But that's like both a try on my bucket list, as well as a would love to have a bottle of that, because it's not your standard Russell's bottle, which I did not realize.
It's a 10-year 101, like a small batch. So that was first released in 2001. That was our first edition. So it's a taller design. It's got this like screen print, the gold capping. I've seen a few of them in my time. I'm lucky to have tried one. They're certainly tasty. I don't know how the different bottling years. I believe it came out in 01 and sort of lasted for about 3 or 4 years before they transitioned it to the 90 proof 10-year-old, etc. But I'd love to kind of get in and venture within the little narrow area that had that 10-year 90 proof, because that's some sort of early 90s transition phase away from those wooden fermenters. So it'll be all stainless steel. It'll be kind of still that lower barrel entry proof of 107 before they shifted later to 110, 115, as Turkey today is at 115. So yeah, make sure you guys are keeping an eye on those emails as well for any private links that have headed out to the BoozApp users. And a huge thank you for playing along with us today.
Thank you, Owen, for putting together these awesome trivia questions. Thank you, everyone who participated. Like we said, keep an eye out if you're popping into liquor stores anyways on a basis, daily basis, and taking a look at what's out there. I highly recommend keeping an eye on the marketplace. There are bottles I've never seen before that kind of hit the market, and there are bottles that I have seen that I've been hunting. And it's fun. It's both, again, a mix of like modern bottles at like great prices. Usually people are just, hey, I've got a couple of these in my collection, I'm looking to move it, coupled with, well, I guess it'll be listed on the marketplace soon, but I saw it when it was coming into the vault for authentication. But some very, very, very old bottles is all I can say on that regard. Definitely the oldest I've ever seen in my life. So it really, really, it runs the gamut from, I could talk about the pre-pros from, bottles from 1924 for sure, all the way through, 2024 releases. So there's, and before, there's really cool stuff. And actually, that takes me only, I know we're almost done. And I guess you'll all have to wait with, not that anyone needs my professional opinion, but you'll have to wait to see which, whether I come out in the Camp Nelson B or the Russell's 15, as the Turkey's bourbon of the year. But one little sneak peek to just the people that are on this live stream that will be being dropped soon. And if you are on this live stream, you also have a chance you're going to get these, actually access to these first. We had the opportunity to do a Russell's single barrel pick when we were down in Kentucky last year. So Russell's runs an incredible single barrels program. We had a chance actually to pick the barrel with Bruce Russell. He took us through the rickhouse that day, and we picked what is a 9-year from Tyrone K, from the Tyrone K rickhouse, floor 4. But what's cool, what we learned when we were down there hanging out with Bruce is, obviously he's known as the Russell's rye guy. He's a big rye fan, and I think his goal under his leadership is to really establish kind of rye as kind of something. Russell's obviously done some incredible ryes and Wild Turkey, but something that he really wants to leave his mark on. We discovered that he's a huge denim fan, like vintage denim. Like he knows a ton about selvage and all these types of denim, which I knew nothing about. So I discovered for the first time that there was stuff to care about in the denim world. Him and Rich on our team and David Tao also were going on about it. So as an homage, every bottle is actually going to come with this really cool Baxus branded denim bag, which I love because it's been ages since the Russells. They used to have these nice velvet bags, and it's been a while since you've seen them. And our pick label is a solid homage as well to a nice jeans leather patch. So I will crack one of these open at another time. Make sure that Owen gets one to try also and give you his official tasting notes. He is a pro, but this is a really, really fun bottle that we're going to be releasing, and again, making available specifically to people who were, or earliest access to people who participated in the live stream. We really appreciate everyone spending their time and spending their Sunday evening with us.
It's great. Yeah, we've got some really cool single barrels coming out through the system. But yep, so keep an eye on your emails, guys. If anyone's maybe private links maybe got lost or otherwise, have a look through your spam as well. But we dropped quite a good chunk of single rick houses, Russell's 15s as well. There'll be plenty still kicking around on the market as you go through. But that's it from us, I think, today. Huge thank you for everyone that joined us.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one.
Good fun.
We'll finish our Glendronach debate on the when we do our Scotch when we host our Scotch one.
We'll do it. Absolutely. Awesome.
Terrific.
Thanks, T. Thanks, whole team. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Cheers.